What I have here is a bullet shell that I picked up during my visit to Matera. It is one of my nicest journalistic trips ever. Omega invited me to come to Matera to see the filming of a scene of the No Time to Die James Bond movie. And during the shooting on the Aston Martin, they used these bullets, and this is one of the shells that they used. And I'm telling you this because during that visit, Omega did a preview of the Omega Seamaster 300M No Time to Die version that came out in 2020. This visit was in, I think it was November 2019 in Matera, Italy. And that's where then they gave us the sneak preview of the new Seamaster that Daniel Craig would be wearing in the No Time to Die movie. But that is not the watch that I want to talk about today. Today I'll talk about this new blue Seamaster 300M 60th anniversary James Bond edition. And as we all know, James Bond was wearing a Rolex Submariner in Dr. No. And after those years he has been wearing Rolex watches, Seiko, Hamilton, Breitling, a plethora of watches until 1995. And in 1995 Omega came into play, and the first watch that they used for James Bond in GoldenEye was a Seamaster 300M in blue, like this one that I'm wearing right now, but with a quartz movement. This is the one with the automatic movement that they used in the next movie, Tomorrow Never Dies. So Pierce Brosnan was the first James Bond actor wearing an Omega Seamaster 300M. And later on, when Daniel Craig became the James Bond, he has been wearing all sorts of different watches. The 300M, the Planet Ocean and the Aquaterra, but in No Time to Die, it was the 300M in titanium. And Daniel Craig has been helping Omega to come up with that watch because it needed to be something that really fitted him. And so he came up with a titanium and with the mesh bracelet that the watch has. And now we are looking at the steel version of that watch in blue for the 60th anniversary of James Bond. Fun fact, a lot of people, they complain that Rolex is the brand that James Bond wore. In the book, he was wearing a Rolex Explorer, and that was because Ian Fleming, the author of the James Bond novels, had an Explorer as well. But since 1995, so for nearly 28 years, Bond has been wearing an Omega watch. What I find cool about this watch is that it combines the No Time to Die titanium version with basically the first version that they did in 1993, which is this one, and that was used in the earlier Bond movies with Pierce Brosnan. And why do I say that? Well, because Omega brought back the small wave pattern. If you look at it closely, the waves are much more detailed and smaller than the ones used in the current 300M lineup, where the dial is made of ceramic. And in this case, just like the No Time to Die, the watch is made of aluminum. So specification-wise, this watch is nearly the same, except of course it's in steel. It has the same movement, it does not have a date. It's just a few of the aesthetics that are different. Interesting thing is here, some people commented about it, but at the top of the bezel, normally there's a triangle at 12 o'clock, and now it says 60, and the 60 of course refers to the 60th anniversary of the James Bond movies. What I also like about this version is that it has a lollipop hand. And the lollipop hand refers to one of those very first Seamaster 300 watches, introduced in 1957. A few years later, I think it was 1959, Omega had a Seamaster 300 for the British military service, Ministry of Defense, and they had this lollipop hand as well. So it's a nice nod to those watches. Quick rundown on the specifications. This watch has a diameter of 42 millimeters. It's 40.3 millimeters thick. That's about 1 millimeter thicker than the No Time to Die version, but I will explain to you in a moment why that is. The lug width is 20 millimeters to fit this beautiful steel mesh bracelet, and inside is Omega's caliber 8806. As said, this watch is a little bit thicker, approximately 1 millimeter, and that's because of the case back. Just like the Speedmaster Silver Snoopy Award, there's a little animation on the case back in this moiré effect, as they call it, where you see 4 frames of the opening sequence of the James Bond movie. So James Bond with his gun in the gun barrel. And it's done by a rotating disc that is connected to the lollipop second hand of the movement. So the animation on the case back here is continuous, other than the Speedmaster Snoopy, of course, where it's connected to the chronograph center hand that you have to activate with the pushers. This one will animate continuously, showing the 4 frames of the opening sequence of James Bond. It does take away a little bit from the movement, so it's more difficult to see the movement, but instead you get this cool animation. Then there's, on the crystal, you see the circles that you will also see in the opening sequence of the Bond movie. The movement is not screw down, but it has these 7, obvious choice of course, screws to mount the case back to the case. The watch, of course, is 300 meters water resistant. It has a screw down crown here, and here is the helium valve. If you're not a saturation diver, you don't need this, but it's a nice feature to have on this watch. And meanwhile, it has become a part of the design of the 300M. The only 300M watches that did not have this helium valve were the GMT versions that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. The price of this watch is 7,900 Swiss francs, or 7,900 US dollars, or 9,000 euros, including VAT. What I think about this watch is that I like the fact that they brought back the smaller waves, just like on the 300M that I'm wearing, the 2531.80. It has smaller waves than the regular version, and I think it's a nice feature that they brought it back on this version as well. What I also like about this watch, just like the No Time to Die and some of the titanium and ceramic models, is that it doesn't have a date window, so it's a very clean dial. It has the lollipop, which I like, and I like the color blue. I like the color blue on this version more than I do on the original 300M from the early 90s. What I really like about this version as well is the mesh style bracelet. Just like on the titanium version, it really wears nice and comfortable on the wrist. That said, if you have small wrists, it can become a little bit of a burden, because the bracelet is rather stiff on some points, especially because it's quite long, and then you will get like holes between your wrist and the bracelet. But on my wrist, which is 18.5 centimeters, it really wears nicely, and I have it on the 4th hole of the bracelet. Wears nice, feels comfortable, and gives this watch a totally different look than the one with the 9-row bracelet that originally comes on the 300M. Another point about this watch is that it's a little bit thicker than the No Time to Die. It's approximately 1 millimeter thicker than the other one. I don't mind, it's a dive watch, it's a 300 meters water resistant watch, so I also expect a little bit of a body on the watch, and if you wear it on the wrist, it's all fine. Cuffs can go over it, so I don't see an issue here. But for those who prefer thin watches, this is not the one. Fun fact, the old one, the previous one, only was 12 millimeters. Of course, that used a different movement, different quality standards. But for me, in fact, whether it's 13 millimeters or 14 millimeters, it's all fine. Thanks for watching this video. Let us know what you think about this 300M 60th anniversary with the beautiful skeletonized sword hands, small wave pattern dial, and the lollipop hand, and of course the animation on the case back. Thanks for watching. See you next time.